There are moments on television that stop you completely. Moments where you forget you're sitting on your couch, forget you were scrolling your phone just a second ago, and you just watch. Mouth open, eyes wide, heart full. Darci Lynne Farmer gave the world one of those moments. A 12-year-old girl from Oklahoma, standing on the biggest talent stage in America, with a pink puppet and a voice that didn't seem possible. And the whole world fell in love with her, just like that. But here's what nobody talks about. Behind that smile, behind those sold-out shows, behind the confetti and the golden buzzer and the millions of fans, there was a girl quietly carrying something heavy, something painful, something that fame couldn't fix and applause couldn't erase. And if you've ever wondered what really happened to Darci Lynne after the cameras stopped rolling, stay right here. Because this story is more emotional than anything you saw on that stage. And it deserves to be told. Darci Lynne grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma, in a warm and loving family that always knew she was special. From a very young age, it was clear she had something, a spark, a gift. But here's the thing that surprises most people when they first hear it. The girl who would one day sing in front of millions was once so painfully shy that she could barely speak in front of a small group. Performing? Singing out loud? Standing in a spotlight? That felt absolutely impossible to her. She was the kind of kid who would shrink in a crowd, who felt more comfortable watching than being watched. Her parents saw that shyness, and they didn't ignore it. They wanted to help her find her confidence, to bring out the light they knew was inside her. So they gently encouraged her to try things that pushed her outside her comfort zone. They entered her into the International Cinderella Scholarship Program, a pageant that gave young girls a chance to build confidence and learn how to carry themselves in public. It wasn't about winning crowns. It was about helping a shy little girl find her voice. And slowly, it started working. Then came the puppets, and everything changed. Darci discovered ventriloquism almost by accident, and the moment she picked up her first puppet, something clicked. The puppet gave her something she had never had before. A layer of safety. A way to perform without feeling completely exposed. She wasn't just Darci standing alone on a stage. She was Darci with a friend, with a partner, with a character that could do and say things that she herself was too shy to do. The puppet became her shield. And behind that shield, her talent absolutely exploded. She practiced constantly. She worked on her voice, her timing, her ability to sing without moving her lips. She created characters with real personalities, real humor, real heart. And by the time she was 12 years old, she was ready. Not just ready. She was extraordinary. On May 30th, 2017, Darci Lynne walked onto the America's Got Talent stage carrying her pink puppet Petunia and enough nervous energy to fill the entire arena. The audience had no idea what was coming. The judges had no idea what was coming. And honestly, even Darci probably didn't fully know what was about to happen. She introduced herself quietly, a little nervously, and then she began to sing through Petunia. The song was Summertime, a classic that most professional adult singers find challenging. And this 12-year-old girl sang it with a purity and a power that made the entire room go still. People gasped, actually gasped out loud. The judges leaned forward. Simon Cowell, a man who has heard just about everything, looked genuinely stunned. And then Mel B stood up, walked over to the golden buzzer, and slammed it down with everything she had. Golden confetti rained from the ceiling. The crowd erupted. Darci stood there, surrounded by gold, tears in her eyes, completely overwhelmed. It was one of the most beautiful moments in the entire history of that show. Within 30 hours, her audition had become the most watched video in AGT history. Just think about that. In one single day, a middle school girl from Oklahoma had become a global sensation. Her name was everywhere. Her face was everywhere. And the world was completely, totally, deeply in love with her. The competition continued, and Darci kept delivering. She brought new puppets to the stage. Oscar, a tiny shy mouse who somehow perfectly matched the sweetness of his creator. And then Edna Doorknocker, a feisty older woman with a very obvious crush on Simon Cowell, which made the whole audience absolutely lose it every single time. Darci wasn't just talented. She was funny. She was charming. She was real. Every performance felt like a gift she was giving directly to the people watching. By the time the finale arrived, the result felt almost inevitable. On September 20th, 2017, Darci Lynne was crowned the winner of America's Got Talent Season 12. And not just any winner. She received the highest number of votes in the history of the AGT finale. History-making, record-breaking, unforgettable. The little girl who once couldn't speak in front of a small crowd had just won the biggest talent competition in the country. And then the real world came rushing in. Because here's what people don't understand about winning something that big. It doesn't slow down after the confetti. It speeds up. Almost immediately, Darci's life transformed into something almost unrecognizable. Interview requests flooded in from every direction. Photo shoots, guest appearances, television spots, brand deals. She appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show. She performed alongside huge stars like Terry Fator and Pentatonix. What was originally supposed to be a small 5-city tour suddenly expanded into a massive 52-venue nationwide spectacle. Her very first major solo show sold out in 6 minutes. 6 minutes. That's not just success. That's a phenomenon. And Darci was 12 years old in the middle of all of it. She still had school. She still had homework, math tests, locker combinations, cafeteria lunches. She still had a childhood that was supposed to be happening. But how do you go back to regular life after 15 million people just watched you on national television? How do you sit in 8th grade history class when your face is on magazine covers? How do you talk to classmates who are now treating you like a celebrity instead of a friend? Darci tried. She really did. She went back to Deer Creek Middle School, wanting things to feel normal again. But normal had left the building. New students who had just watched her on AGT would spot her in the hallway and completely freeze up. She once described it herself, saying it was a little crazy, that kids would see her and go, "Oh my gosh, Darci Lynne." And while that might sound flattering on the surface, imagine experiencing that every single day. Imagine never being able to just be a regular kid, even in a place that's supposed to feel safe and familiar. And it wasn't just affecting her. Her brother Nate, who had never asked for any of this, found himself caught in the middle of his sister's fame. Darci later shared how he would come home frustrated because all anyone ever wanted to talk about was her. Not him. Not his life, his interests, his day. Just Darci. That kind of thing quietly breaks something in a family, even when everyone loves each other deeply. To try and make everything work, Darci and her team came up with a plan. She would perform on weekends and holidays only, keeping her weekdays free for school. On paper, it sounded reasonable. But in real life, weekends packed with travel, sound checks, performances, and meet and greets left her completely drained by Monday morning. And then Monday meant school, and school meant more attention, more questions, more being on when all she wanted was to just breathe. The line between being Darci, the performer, and being Darci, the person, started to blur. And that blurring, that constant pressure to always be on, started quietly doing real damage. Because Darci Lynne, despite all appearances, was struggling. Most people looking at her from the outside saw a confident, bubbly, impossibly talented young star. What they didn't see was the anxiety that had been living inside her long before AGT, quietly growing louder with every new level of fame. She had always been a deeply sensitive girl, a worrier, someone who felt things strongly and cared deeply about what others thought. And fame, rather than calming those feelings, turned up the volume on all of them. She began to feel something that many successful people feel, but almost nobody talks about. Imposter syndrome. That quiet, creeping voice that whispers you're not actually good enough, that it was all just luck, that someday everyone will figure out you don't really deserve any of this. Even with millions of fans. Even with sold-out shows. Even with every judge on America's Got Talent standing and clapping for her. That voice kept talking. What if it was just a fluke? What if I'm not actually as good as people think? She has talked about this herself, sharing how she constantly worried about disappointing people, about making mistakes, about not living up to the image everyone had of her. I felt like I always had to be the happy, perfect girl that everyone fell in love with on AGT, she once said. and carrying that expectation day after day, with no break, no space to just be messy and human and imperfect like every teenager deserves to be. That was exhausting in a way that went far beyond physical tiredness. School eventually became impossible to maintain in the traditional way, missing so many days due to touring, then cramming everything in when she returned. The cycle was brutal. She described it herself as really tough. So she made the painful decision to leave public school and transition to homeschooling. It was the right call practically, but emotionally it was another piece of normal life slipping away. And then things got darker. Behind the scenes, away from cameras and fans and social media, Darci's body started sending signals that couldn't be ignored. Chronic fatigue set in, the kind that doesn't go away with a good night's sleep. There were mornings she reportedly couldn't get out of bed. Her entire body just weighed down and empty. Headaches became a regular part of her life. Her voice, the very thing that had made her famous, felt strained and worn from the relentless performing schedule. But it wasn't just physical. Emotionally, things were unraveling quietly. Panic attacks started happening with more frequency. And panic attacks don't care where you are or what you're doing. They don't wait for a convenient moment. Imagine having one right before you're about to walk out onto a stage in front of thousands of people. Imagine your chest tightening and your breath shortening and your mind spinning and still having to go out there and smile and perform and be perfect. The puppets that had once been her comfort, her safety, her joy, started to feel like a weight she was being forced to carry. The thing she had loved most was starting to feel like a burden. Fans began to notice something was off, even from a distance. Comments started appearing online. She looks tired. Is she okay? She doesn't seem like herself. The concerned whispers grew louder. And while some of the internet speculation was unfair and exaggerated, the core of what people were sensing was real. Darci was not okay. Her parents recognized it too. And they did what good parents do. They stepped in firmly and lovingly. They made the decision to scale back. They turned down interviews. They reduced her social media activity. They created a protective buffer around their daughter. And they brought in professionals, therapists, counselors, doctors, people who could help Darci work through what she was experiencing in a healthy and supported way. Her mother made it clear that their daughter's well-being came before everything else. Before the shows. Before the bookings. Before the public image. It was a brave and necessary choice. And it gave Darci something she hadn't had in years. Space. Space to breathe. Space to feel things without having to immediately perform happiness. Space to just be a teenager, confused and tired and figuring herself out, without the whole world watching every single move. And in that space, something unexpected happened. The pandemic arrived and the world went quiet. Suddenly, there were no tours, no stages, no expectations. Darci found herself home for the first time in what felt like forever. She later admitted she didn't even know what to do with herself at first. She had spent so much of her life performing that just being still felt strange and a little scary. But instead of falling apart, she started creating. Quietly, privately. With no cameras and no audience, she taught herself how to write music. She sat in her room and she explored what else she could be beyond the puppet and the golden buzzer moment. And what she found surprised even her. She began working with Oklahoma musicians Maggie McClure and Shane Henry, and together they created her debut original single, Push Our Luck, released on February 5, 2024. It was light and honest and full of real emotion. It sounded like someone stepping into who they actually are rather than who everyone expects them to be. She also stepped into acting, co-starring in the Netflix film A Cowgirl Song in 2022. She produced the music video for Push Our Luck herself, and that video went on to win Best Music Video 2024 from the Los Angeles Film Awards. She released another track called Someone Wake Me Up, showing a deeper, richer, more mature version of her voice. And she returned to the AGT stage in 2024 for America's Got Talent Fantasy League, this time as a 19-year-old young woman with a guitar in her hands and something new to say. She put Petunia down. She stood on her own, and she showed the world she was not just a ventriloquist. She was an artist. But perhaps the most quietly powerful part of Darci's story is what she has done with everything she went through. Rather than hiding from her own difficult experiences, she has turned them into a reason to show up for others. She visited children at the Seacrest Studios inside the Children's Hospital of Orange County, bringing her puppets and her warmth to kids who were fighting battles far harder than anything she had faced. For those children, her visit wasn't just entertainment. It was kindness. It was someone saying, "I see you, and you matter." She also joined the campaign for Horses for Mental Health, standing alongside actor Dennis Quaid and others to shine a light on equine therapy and its impact on people struggling with their mental wellness. She didn't do it for headlines. She did it because she genuinely understood what it feels like to need support and to not always have the words to ask for it. And that understanding, that deep personal awareness of what emotional struggle actually looks like, is what makes Darci Lynne's story so much more than a talent show fairy tale. She started as a shy girl who was afraid to be seen. She became a global sensation almost overnight. She fought silently through anxiety, exhaustion, isolation, and the crushing pressure of being perfect for a world that had put her on a pedestal. She stepped back when she needed to. She healed. She reinvented herself on her own terms. And she came back stronger, more honest, more fully herself than ever before. That's not just a comeback story. That's a story about courage. About what it really takes to survive fame when you're still just a kid. About the importance of family, of rest, of being allowed to be human even when the world wants you to be a superstar. Darci Lynne never stopped being that girl from Oklahoma with a big heart and a bigger voice. She just finally got the chance to show the world all the other things she is too. And honestly, the best chapters of her story are still being written.